Please, close your eyes for just a moment. Try to remember a specific sound from your childhood. Perhaps it is the rhythmic clacking of wooden blocks echoing down a narrow street, or the melancholic melody of the evening chime warning you that the sun is setting and it is time to go home. Take a deep breath. Can you smell the slightly dusty, sweet aroma of roasted soybean flour from the neighborhood candy store? Welcome back, my old friend. Today, we're taking a journey back to the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s in Japan. We're going to relive it to when the magical details of our childhood during the Showa era. These were days filled with simple joys and unhurried moments. And please, stay with me until the very end, because the final memory we will share is the one sound that defined the end of every single childhood day. A sound that will surely bring a warm tear to your eye. Before we open the door to our past, let us remember how time used to flow back then. The Showa was a period of incredible transformation for our country, transitioning from the quiet recovery of the post-war years into the dazzling, bustling energy of the bubble economy. Yet, despite the rapid modernization outside our windows, our homes and neighborhoods retained a deep, traditional heart. Time moved slower. We did not have smartphones or instant messages. Instead, we had the beautiful gift of anticipation. We waited for our favorite television shows. We waited for the film to be developed at the camera shop. And we waited for our friends at the park. There is a common myth today that without modern technology, people lived a poorer emotional life. But we know the absolute opposite is true. Our lives were infinitely richer in sincerity, in patience, and in genuine human connection. We spoke face to face. We shared the warmth of a single heater. And we found endless magic in the simplest of things. Let us gently brush the dust off these precious memories and step back into those golden days. And now, let us remember the crisp, cool air of a summer morning during school vacation. Do you recall waking up before the intense heat of the day set in? It was time for radio taiso, the morning calisthenics broadcasted across the entire nation. You would wake up, still rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and grab that small, precious piece of cardboard hung around your neck on a piece of yarn. Walking to the local park, you would hear the crunch of your sneakers on the gravel and the distant chatter of neighbors gathering together. As the radio crackled to life with that iconic, lively piano melody from the National Broadcasting Corporation, everyone from small children to elderly grandparents would stretch their arms to the sky in unison. The smell of the damp earth and morning dew mixed with the scent of green leaves. It was not just about the exercise, it was about the community, the shared routine, and the deep satisfaction of receiving a bright red stamp on your attendance card from the local volunteer. When the card was full at the end of the summer, the reward of a notebook or some pencils felt like the greatest treasure in the world. It was a simple ritual, but it bound the neighborhood together in a way that modern mornings have completely forgotten. Let us take a walk down a narrow street to the local dagashiya, the neighborhood penny candy store. You could hear the familiar jingle of the small bell attached to the sliding glass door as you walked in, stepping out of the bright sunshine into the dimly lit, magical interior. The air inside always smelled intensely of sugary syrup, roasted soybeans, and old paper. Behind the counter sat an elderly woman, a quiet guardian of this childhood paradise, watching over rows and rows of clear plastic jars and cardboard boxes filled with colorful treasures. You would stand there for what felt like hours, clutching a few 10-yen coins in your sweaty palm, feeling their heavy, metallic weight. Making a choice was a serious matter. Would you buy the sweet stick coated in roasted soybean flour, hoping to find a red mark on the toothpick that meant you won a free one? Or perhaps a sour plum, or a whistle candy that let you make music before you ate it? The dagashiya was our very first lesson in independence and economics. It was a space that belonged entirely to children, where a handful of small copper coins made you feel incredibly wealthy. We did not just buy cheap sweets. We bought anticipation, excitement, and a sense of belonging in our small corner of the world. Do you remember the quiet, heavy warmth of a winter evening gathered around the kotatsu? Let us step back into those chilly December nights in the 1970s and 1980s. The kotatsu was not just a piece of furniture. It was the gravitational center of the entire house. You would slide your legs under the thick quilted blanket, feeling the immediate, comforting heat radiating from the electric heater underneath. The smell of the heated fabric mixed with the sweet, citrusy aroma of small mandarin oranges piled high in a woven basket right in the center of the wooden tabletop. Peeling those oranges was a ritual in itself. You would carefully break the vibrant orange skin, releasing a burst of fragrant essential oils into the dry winter air, while the television hummed softly in the corner, perhaps broadcasting a year-end music festival. Everyone stayed anchored to that spot, reluctant to brave the cold of the hallway. Shoulders brushed, feet accidentally touched under the blanket, and conversations flowed naturally. It was a time when heating the whole house was a luxury, so we warmed ours by staying close to one another. The kotatsu held our families together, wrapping us in a shared cocoon of warmth, laughter, and simple contentment. Let us journey to the sento, the public bathhouse, which was an essential part of the evening routine. You would walk down the street in your wooden sandals, the hard soles clicking rhythmically against the asphalt, clutching a plastic basin filled with a towel and a bar of soap. Pushing open the sliding door, you were immediately hit by a wall of warm, billowing steam. The scent was unmistakable, a comforting blend of light sulfur, floral soap, and damp wood. Inside, the echoing sounds were almost musical. Splashing water, the clatter of wooden buckets on tile floors, and voices bouncing off the high ceilings painted with grand murals of Mount Fuji. Bathing was a communal affair, where neighbors washed each other's backs and caught up on local gossip. But perhaps the best part came after the bath. Emerging into the cool changing room with flushed, glowing skin, you would buy a glass bottle of cold coffee milk. You would pop the paper cap and drink it with one hand on your hip, feeling the heavy, cold glass against your lips. That sweet, icy milk tasted like pure heaven after the intense heat of the water. A perfectly refreshing end to a long, busy day. And now, let us recall the unmistakable scent of summer, the deep green spiral of the mosquito coil. As the humid evening approached and the cicadas began their loud buzzing symphony, a parent would bring out the ceramic pig-shaped holder. Lighting the tip of the coil was mesmerizing. You watched the small flame catch, then blew it out gently, leaving a glowing red ember that slowly ate its way around the spiral. The earthy, slightly powdery smoke would rise and curl into the thick summer air. That smell meant summer had truly arrived. It brought a profound sense of safety from the buzzing pests, while the family sat together on the wooden veranda facing the garden. You would sit there in your thin cotton clothes, eating wedges of cold, juicy watermelon, spitting the black seeds into the dark yard. The mosquito coil burned for hours, acting as a slow, quiet metronome for those long, lazy summer nights. The fragrance of that smoke lingers in our memories, not just as an insect repellent, but as the defining perfume of our youth, a scent that instantly transports us back to the safety of our childhood homes. Do you remember the extreme focus required to record a song onto a cassette tape? In the 1980s, long before digital playlists, building a music collection required patience and perfect timing. You would sit completely still by the stereo or radio, waiting for the announcer to introduce the new single from your favorite pop idol. Your fingers would hover nervously over the play and record buttons, knowing you had to press them simultaneously with a loud, mechanical crack. If anyone walked into the room and spoke, or if the telephone rang, the recording was ruined, capturing those background noises forever. The tapes themselves had a distinct smell of new plastic and magnetic ribbon. We all remember the delicate, stressful act of carefully rewinding a tangled tape with the tip of a hexagonal pencil, praying it would not snap. We spent hours creating perfect mixtapes for our friends, carefully writing the track titles on the tiny cardboard insert with a colored pen. Handing that plastic case to someone was a deeply personal gesture. We cherished every single song because we had to work so hard to capture it, making the music mean so much more than just background noise. Let us think back to the first days of elementary school and the heavy burden of the randoseru, the traditional leather backpack. Receiving a brand new, genuine leather backpack was a major milestone. You can probably still remember the stiff, rich smell of the new leather on the first day of spring. The bag felt enormous and incredibly heavy on your small shoulders, like carrying a small house on your back. As you ran down the street to meet your friends, the firm leather and metal clasps made a rhythmic, bouncing thud against your spine. Wearing those bright yellow safety hats, you would walk to school in a large group, kicking small pebbles along the road, finding shortcuts through narrow residential alleyways. You would hear the distinct crunch of gravel under your uniform shoes and the distant sound of the school bell ringing. The backpack was designed to endure the rough play of childhood and last for 6 whole years. Over time, the stiff leather softened, bearing the scratches and scuffs of countless adventures, transforming from a rigid uniform piece into a comfortable, deeply personal companion that protected your most precious childhood secrets. Step back into the kitchen of the 1970s and 1980s. A place burst with vibrant, optimistic colors. Do you remember the large, cheerful floral patterns that decorated almost every household appliance? The rice cookers, the thermos pots, and the storage containers were often bright green, vibrant orange, or deep red, covered in large, painted blossoms. The kitchen was the warm, beating heart of the house. You could hear the heavy clunk of the thermos pot, dispensing boiling water for green tea. Then there was the rhythmic, hollow sound of a mother chopping vegetables on a thick wooden cutting board. An early morning lullaby that told you everything was right with the world. The rich, salty aroma of miso soup bring a down drift through the paper screens. serving as the ultimate gentle morning alarm clock. We did not have sleek, minimalist, stainless steel kitchens back then.
Our kitchens were loud, colorful, and completely unpretentious.
They were spaces filled with steam, the smell of simmering soy sauce, and the tireless love of the mothers who stood there every day, preparing meals that nourished both our bodies and our spirits. And now, let us remember meal times around the chabudai, the low round wooden table in the tatami room. Before Western dining tables became the norm, our lives revolved around the floor. Do you remember the distinct, grassy scent of fresh tatami mats, feeling slightly rough yet cool against your bare feet? We would kneel in the traditional seated posture, feeling the weight of our tradition in our very bones. Setting the table was a family affair. You would hear the delicate sound of ceramic rice bowls and wooden chopsticks touching the smooth surface of the low table. Eating around a small round table meant there was no head of the table. We were all incredibly close, our knees almost touching, sharing dishes from the center. It forced us to look directly into each other's eyes and talk.
When the meal was over, the legs of the table were easily folded away with a snap, and the table was rolled into the corner, instantly transforming the dining room back into a wide-open living space or a bedroom. That low wooden table taught us adaptability and closeness, proving that we did not need large houses to feel surrounded by the warmth of family. Let us fast forward to the magic of the year 1983, a year that changed childhood forever with the arrival of the family computer console. The burgundy and white plastic machine was the centerpiece of our living rooms. Do you recall the sacred ritual of pulling out a gray rectangular game cartridge and blowing fiercely into the bottom edge to clear the dust? We all believed it was the ultimate magic cure for any glitch or frozen screen. The sharp 8-bit sound effects and cheerful electronic melodies echoed through the house, becoming the new soundtrack of a word tuna foons. Navy bird kids would reeve their bicycles in a tumber, chaotic pile outside your front door, and rash inside to sit cross-legged on your floor. We passed the rectangular controller back and forth, our thumbs sore from mashing the hard plastic buttons. It was a shared physical experience. We cheered loudly for each other, offered unwanted advice, and groaned in unison when a character fell down a digital pit.
Video games back then did not isolate us in separate rooms with headsets. They brought the entire neighborhood together on one living room rug, united by the glowing screen of a heavy glass television. Let us step out into the blinding glare of the August sun during summer vacation, a time entirely dedicated to the serious business of bug catching. You would leave the house armed with a long bamboo pole, carrying a green mesh net and a small green plastic cage hanging from your shoulder. Walking slowly through the woods or the local shrine grounds, your eyes scanned the laft's bark for the ultimate prize, the large Hundrine Nasrus beater was a fierce stack beater. The air was sick and humid, filled with the loud, overwhelming, almost deafening symphony of thousands of cicadas. The forest smelled deeply of crushed green leaves, damp soil, and tree sap. When you finally caught a prized beetle, the sense of triumph was immense. We would keep our treasures in those small plastic cages in our bedrooms, feeding them slices of cucumber or watermelon rind, watching them obsessively. It was a time when children were deeply connected to the natural world around them. We learned patience, observation, and the delicate cycle of life and death, all through the simple
joyous act of exploring the summer woods with a bamboo net in hand.
Do you remember the metallic clatter of the aluminum lunchbox inside your school bag? Before colourful plastic containers became common, mothers packed our lunches in shiny, silver aluminum boxes. Pulling it out at lunchtime, the box was sometimes still slightly warm if it had been wrapped in a thick, insulated cloth. Opening the tight lid was a moment of pure anticipation. Inside, you would usually find perfectly packed white rice, and in the exact center sat a single, intensely red, sour pickled plum. It looked exactly like the national flag. The salty, tangy smell of that plum, mixed with the aroma of soy sauce and cooked egg, instantly made your mouth water. The aluminum was prone to getting tiny dents and scratches, and it made a loud, scraping noise against your chopsticks as you ate the last grains of rice. But looking back, that simple metal box was a profound vessel of love.
It represented a mother's silent, daily devotion, waking up before dawn in the cold kitchen to ensure you had a beautiful, nourishing meal. The taste of that simple, perfectly packed rice is a flavor of pure comfort that no fancy restaurant could ever replicate.
Let us remember the quiet, misty dawn and the familiar routine of the morning milk delivery. Waking up while the house was still silent, you would step out in your pajamas to the front gate. Attached to the wall was a small wooden or plastic box, and inside sat the day's delivery. You would pull out the heavy glass bottles there, sides of often covered with cold condensation. Carrying them back to the kitchen, you could hear the satisfying clink of the thick glass touching. Opening the bottle was a specific skill. You had to use a special tool or push your fingernail carefully into the edge of the thick paper cap until it popped off with a soft sound. The incredibly rich, creamy taste of that cold milk before the neighborhood had fully woken up was simply divine. You would drink it while listening to the distant, rhythmic sound of a morning train passing by. Returning the empty, rinsed glass bottles to the box the next day created a silent, trusting relationship with the milkman whom we rarely ever saw. It was a gentle rhythm of give and take, a reliable, comforting start to every single day. And what about the sturdy, incredibly reliable mother's bicycle? The machine that kept our daily lives moving. It was a heavy steel bicycle with a large metal basket on the front and a child seat on the back. You probably remember sitting in that back seat, holding onto the metal bars, feeling the wind in your face, and watching your mother's back as she pedaled with all her might up a steep hill. The bicycle had a distinct mechanical symphony. The rhythmic squeak of the pedals, the rattling of the front basket, filled to the brim with long white radishes, leeks, and plastic grocery bags, and the loud, squealing protest of the brakes. You would hear the soft, polite ding of the silver bell as she navigated through crowded, narrow shopping streets. That bicycle was our primary mode of transportation, our school bus, and our cargo truck. It was not built for speed or style. It was built for endurance. Riding on the back of that bicycle, wrapped in the safety of your mother's shadow, feeling the bumps of the road, was a feeling of ultimate security. It represents the tireless, unseen physical labor of the mothers who carried the weight of the family every single day. Let us immerse ourselves in the magical atmosphere of a summer festival night. The humid evening air was completely transformed by the glow of hundreds of red and white paper lanterns swaying in the gentle breeze. You were likely wearing a freshly washed cotton summer kimono, feeling the crisp, starchy fabric against your skin and the wooden clogs on your feet. The air was thick with the smoky, savory scent of fried noodles and sweet, spun sugar cotton candy. But the most defining sound was the rhythmic, deep, booming thump of the traditional taiko drums, a sound so powerful you could feel it vibrating in your chest. You would squat carefully by a shallow pool of water, holding a fragile paper scooper, trying with all your might to catch a s'more, dotting a goldfish before the delicate paper dissolved to completely. The festival was a rare, chaotic break from the orderly day rerouting. It was a night of vibrant colors, loud laughter, and mysterious shadows, where the entire town came together in celebration. The taste of shaved ice melting on your tongue under the warm summer sky remains one of the purest tastes of childhood joy. Do you remember the peaceful ritual of visiting the local Shinto shrine? You would walk up the wide path, listening to the loud crunch of the small white gravel beneath your shoes. The air around the shrine always felt cooler, shaded by ancient towering cedar trees and carrying the faint woody scent of burning incense. Approaching the main hall, you would toss a 5-yen coin into the large wooden slotted box, listening to the heavy clank of the coin hitting the wood. You grabbed the thick, rough rope and swung it to ring the brass bell, waking the spirits. Then you clapped your hands twice, the sound sharp and clear in the quiet air. Afterwards, you would buy a paper fortune. You shook the wooden cylinder until a single stick fell out, and traded it for a crisp, neatly folded piece of thin paper. Unfolding it with trembling hands to read your luck for the year was a moment of immense suspense. If the fortune was bad, you would carefully tie the paper to the rough bark of a pine tree branch, leaving your worries behind in the care of the shrine. It was a beautiful lesson in accepting fate and letting go of our anxieties. Let us turn our attention to the soft, gentle light that filtered through the traditional sliding paper doors of our homes. The delicate, translucent paper, stretched tightly over a wooden lattice, created a unique atmosphere that modern glass windows simply cannot replicate. In the morning, the sunlight was softly diffused, casting gentle, blurred shadows of the garden trees across the tatami floor. You remember the dry, whispering sound of sliding the wooden door open along its wooden track to let the morning breeze inside. As a child, there was always an overwhelming, mischievous temptation to poke a wet finger straight through the delicate paper. And when accidents inevitably happened, patching those small holes was a quiet domestic chore. You would watch your parents cut out a small piece of fresh white paper, perhaps shaped like a cherry blossom, and glue it over the tear. In the winter, you could feel a sharp, cold draft seeping through the edges, reminding you of the harsh weather outside. Those paper screens taught us to move gently and respect our surroundings, blurring the hard lines between the inside of our homes and the natural world outside. Do you remember the pure excitement of standing in front of a brightly colored capsule toy machine outside the local supermarket? Those machines whirred in wind-up like centuries of joy. You would carefully insert a heavy 100-yen coin into the silver slot. The physical effort required to turn the metal dial was significant for a child. You twisted it with both hands, listening to the incredibly loud, mechanical clack, clack, crank of the gears turning inside. Then came the magical hollow thud of a plastic spherical capsule dropping down into the metal tray. Prying open that tight plastic shell was a struggle, but it released a distinct, fresh factory scent of molded plastic and rubber. Inside might be a tiny, detailed monster figure, a miniature eraser shaped like a bowl of ramen, or a small mechanical trinket. It was our own miniature version of gambling, fueled entirely by pocket money. The anticipation of not knowing which toy you would get was thrilling. Even if you received a duplicate of a toy you already owned, the sheer joy of the mechanical process, the turning of the dial, and the sound of the drop was worth every single coin. Let us reach a little further back into the 1960s and 70s to remember the traveling picture storyteller. Long before every house had a television set, children gathered on the street corners for entertainment. You would hear the sharp, piercing clacking of wooden blocks echoing through the neighborhood, the universal call that the storyteller had arrived. He rode a bicycle with a wooden stage strapped to the back. We would rush out with a few small coins to buy a cheap sticky candy, which guaranteed a front row spot sitting on the ground. The storyteller was a master of drama. He would slide beautifully painted cardboard pictures in and out of the wooden frame, changing his voice to play brave heroes, scary monsters, and crying princesses. We would gasp, cheer, and laugh collectively, our eyes wide with wonder at the painted images. As the sun began to set, the story would inevitably end on a massive cliffhanger, ensuring we would all return the next day. It was a magical, shared theater experience that slowly faded away as glowing television screens took over our living rooms, replacing the warm, expressive voice of the man on the bicycle. And finally, let us remember the one sound that universally signaled the end of our childhood days. The sky would turn a deep, bruised orange and rich purple as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. Suddenly, there would be a loud, electrical crack from the tall neighborhood speakers. Then, the halting, deeply melancholic melody of the evening chime, known as Yuyake Koyake, would begin to play. It was the absolute, unquestionable signal that playtime was over. You'd see the shadows of the telephone, poles stretching long and dark across the street. There was a sudden rush of hurried goodbyes, the chaotic grabbing of bicycles, and the sound of children running in every direction. As you ran home, you could smell the aromas of dinner drifting from the kitchen windows of the houses you passed, the smell of grilling fish and soy sauce. Arriving at your own front door, breathing heavily, you were greeted by the warm yellow light of your home and the comforting voice of your mother. That evening chime was not just a clock. It was the beautiful, bittersweet curtain falling on a day of freedom, calling us safely back into the loving arms of our families. As we open our eyes and return to the present day, it becomes clear that we do not just miss the old toys, the candy, or the paper doors. What we truly ache for is the way we felt back then. We miss the slow parse of time, the warmth of the tight-knit communities, and the simple, unquestioned, bruised entity that we was ave and loved. The Showa may be across the chapter in the history books, but the rituals, the scents, and the sounds we shared live on fiercely within our hearts. They shaped who we are today. Thank you so much for taking this nostalgic walk down memory lane with me. If this journey brought a warm feeling to your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to explore these beautiful memories together. And now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 20 memories touched you the most? Did you have a favorite childhood candy or a special memory of the evening chime? Please share your personal stories in the comments below. Let us keep the beautiful spirit of our childhood alive together.